Hi, everyone. This is Brittany Breton, MSW intern with Love is Healing LLC. We specialize in treating complex trauma through psychotherapy, shamanic reiki healing, and comprehensive community support services. And I wanted to come on today to talk to you all about compassion. So I picked compassion as a topic because I feel like it's something I've grown with a lot as I've developed personally and professionally. It used to be something that I saw solely as the way I connect with others and communicate with others and share with others. And as I have grown and developed, I have shifted that belief and viewpoint from starting with a connection to others with actually being something that starts inside of ourselves. And so I wanted to kind of make those connections with you all today. So compassion, the definition of it is to literally suffer with someone or to suffer together, which sounds similar to empathy, because in empathy, we're wanting to understand someone's emotions, their state, their viewpoint. And so with empathy, we have an awareness and care for other people's experiences and attempting to feel those emotions from their perspective. And compassion takes that. And when we have compassion for others, it's almost like we're wanting to take action to help do something about it. And so that action and practicing compassion could be anything. It could be saying a prayer about someone that you care for, sending them positive vibes, giving them a phone call, sending a postcard, making them a baked good, setting up a lunch date. There are countless ways that we can practice compassion. And it doesn't always have to involve reaching out to someone. If that's not appropriate for the situation, we can certainly give compassion in our own ways by spreading positive energy in whatever way that we believe will be effective. And so compassion impacts us in a lot of different ways. Compassion interventions promote social connection, which helps build our support systems for when we need help. Compassion is associated with improved parent-child relationships. And so really trying to understand one another and trying to get on the same page. Compassion is good in those relationships. High self-criticism and low habitual self-compassion are related to higher risk of depression. And so that's when we're really hard on ourselves. We get to a point where we may be feeling super critical and not really giving ourselves any space for compassion that we deserve. And that impacts the way we give compassion to others as well, which I'll touch on here in a minute. Self-compassion is related to reduced PTSD symptoms severity. Self-compassion can also impact our self-esteem. So that's impacting the way that we see ourselves in the world. So there are 5 levels of compassion. And the first is ordinary human compassion. And so that's where we see someone suffering and we don't want them to suffer. And that's the extent of the ordinary human compassion. We're seeing it, we don't want them to be there. And we have that thought of, oh, I wish that was not happening to them. And it stops there. So compassion of understanding is not only do I feel bad about you suffering, I want to understand why you're suffering. I want to get your viewpoint on things and see things the way you see them to really fully grasp where you are. So that's compassion of understanding. Compassion of recognition would be, I don't see myself as different from you. So that would be, I may not be struggling with a drug addiction, but I struggle with my own addictions in life, whether it be to social media or to sugar or many different things. There are a lot of addictions people can have. And so just because I may not be struggling with a specific drug addiction that someone else may not be, I can still put myself and give compassion in that situation and see a perspective that's enhanced, because I do have similar, not the same, struggles on my own end. And so that can also be done in the view of grief. If we see someone grieving, if we see someone suffering through grief, we may not be in their position, but if you have gone through grief, like I have, like many people I know, you carry that grief with you. It doesn't stop at some point. It becomes integrated and we learn how to live our daily lives with it, but we still carry that with us. And so when we see others grieving and going through a very fresh grief, it really gives us that enhanced perspective of, wow, we're the same. We go through the same processes. Our situations are different, but we experience a lot of the same internal shifts when these things arise. And the compassion of truth. I'm not trying to protect you from the pain. So that's where we know something may hurt someone, and it's going to be really hard for us to be honest. But the fact of being honest is being compassionate, because it's going to be the road that leads to the least amount of harm. And so that would be the compassion of truth. And the last but not least is compassionate possibility. And I think this is something that I know I and many of my colleagues practice often, is not mistaking people for their body armor. And so that's not judging a book by its cover, I guess, is the simplest way you could put that. But if you see someone in a lower state, having trouble, suffering through something, instead of seeing them in that light, seeing them in a way, where are they at their best? They may be struggling right now. They may have lost their job. They may be financially having trouble. They may have their family having social problems at home. That's them right now. If we look at their bigger picture and view them as a whole person, then we're not wanting to look at them as the struggles they're going through right now. We want to look at them as a whole person who's experiencing something difficult right now, but has immense potential and possibility to get back to a thriving state that they are capable of. And so that would be the compassionate possibility. And so I wanted to go over these different types of compassion, because I feel like it is complicated to know how to be compassionate with others and compassionate with ourselves. So I wanted to explore that kind of process. And I do think that starting with self-compassion is the most important place to be, because when we give ourselves compassion, we're able to give it to others as well. So some people may be in a situation where they think, oh, I've been through something just as hard as that person, and I was able to get through it, and I'm just fine, and nobody gave me any compassion. That's really harsh. That's really difficult. And when people say things like that, it discounts everything that they also went through. It's not only discounting the person that they're looking at and saying that about, it's discounting what they went through and the fact that they deserved compassion when they were in a similar situation and didn't receive it. And so that's how kind of our own self-compassion lens can then impact the compassion that we're able to give to others. If we don't have compassion for ourselves when we're strung out, overwhelmed, exhausted, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, then it's going to be a lot harder for us to give it to someone else, because they are going through something similar to us and we made it through without it, and it was hard and nobody was there for us. And so it's kind of that give and take of wanting to take a step back and make things different. Just because we may have gone through something that we didn't have the compassion we deserve doesn't mean everybody for the rest of forever should go through that. I think shifting from, I was able to do that just fine, why is she complaining, over to, I've been through that and I made it through, but it was really tough. So what they're going through is probably also really tough. And just having that very brief shift in our viewpoint can really help us expand on our ability to be compassionate to ourselves and compassionate to others. And to start practicing self-compassion, just to get started at things. I know it's not always the most easy thing. One of the best tips that I've heard is to talk to yourself like you would a friend. And this can be so much harder than people give it credit for. I think that I know I'm very critical of myself. I know a lot of people are very critical of themselves. And so when I view myself in a situation, even if it's similar to something I've seen a friend go through, I tend to have this resistance to giving myself compassion. Like, I need to be strong. I need to keep going. I don't have time to stop and do that. But I find that the more that I push myself in those situations, the more I really need that compassion. And the more I need to take a step back and take a break and say, wow, I'm going through a lot right now, and this is tough. And I deserve a little bit of support and a little bit of rest, relaxation to help get me through all of this. That way, when you see others going through it, you can take a pause and say, wow, giving myself compassion in those moments really made a difference. I hope I can do the same for someone else. Because talking to ourselves the way we talk to a friend may not feel authentic at first. And I think the same thing with affirmations. Like, I like to use sticky note affirmations because I don't even have to say them. They're just around my house and I can read them everywhere. But when I write them, when I read them, the way I talk to myself, if I'm not feeling like it's necessarily exactly how I authentically feel right now, I will continue to tell myself that, and I will try to adjust it as possible. Maybe instead of saying, you know, I deserve a break right now, this is all really hard. If I feel like I'm having a hard time coming to that, I can at least say, I deserve self-compassion because I'm tired. And starting somewhere really basic and working your way up to, wow, I'm going through a lot right now. I really deserve a break and compassion, and I would like love and support from those around me. So when I see my loved ones going through something similar, I think they probably need the same thing. It's a very complicated give and take when it's lined out, but as we grow and learn to practice compassion with ourselves and compassion for others, we get stronger in both areas. And it becomes a lot less complex. It becomes more second nature. Our brains rewire to the point where they're used to thinking in compassionate patterns. And that can be a process, but it can happen. Our brains are built to change. And so really focusing on giving yourself acceptance and compassion so you can give it to others. And that self-compassion also makes a huge impact on our self-esteem, because it views the way that we view ourselves is the way that our self-esteem is formed. And so if we're really hard and critical on ourselves and we don't cut ourselves any slack or tell ourselves, well, gosh, it sounds like you were just doing your best in the moment, then it's a lot easier to say, you're not doing things right. You're not where you're supposed to be. You're not on track where you planned you would be. You're behind everyone else. Those things very easily come up in our brains because our brains are taught to problem solve. But sometimes ruminating and highlighting all these things that aren't really even that much of a problem can be really damaging. And so taking a step back and thinking, okay, I deserve self-compassion. I am not perfect, but I'm doing my best, and that's what matters. I'm doing everything I can, and I deserve some kindness for myself and from those around me. And that can make a big difference in how hard we are on ourselves, and that can impact how we view ourselves and how we interact with others. So it is honestly a cycle of compassion, and the more that we can give, the easier it will be for us to accept it for ourselves as well. So I also think that ties in really well with our mission as a whole at Love is Healing, is because we want to provide love, and compassion is definitely a big part of love. And so the more that we're able to give ourselves compassion and love ourselves, the easier it is to give compassion to others and love others. But thank you all so much for watching. I hope you got some tips. I hope some things were helpful for you. Please share this video if you found it interesting, and please feel free to leave any respectful comments or questions that you have. If you'd like to book a consultation, training, or healing session, please visit us at loveishealingllc.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at the handle at @loveishealingllc. Thank you again so much for listening, and I hope to see you soon.